Hello, greetings, fellow DC fans, and welcome to DCEUcember 2021. This year, we're going to be looking at the films from the DC Extended Universe, going up from Man of Steel all the way to the theatrical cut of Justice League. And the next year, we're going to be looking at the Snyder cut of Justice League, followed by all the other films that came after it. So there you go. But anyway, so let's kick things off with Man of Steel. The planet Krypton is destabilized from the mining of the planetary core. Just before the planet explodes, Krypton's Supreme Council Chief Advisor Jor-El infuses the genetics code into his infant son, infuses the genetics codex into his infant son Kal-El, the first naturally born Kryptonian child in centuries. Jor-El manages to send Kal-El in a spaceship toward Earth before being killed by General Zod during Uprising. Kal-El lands in Kansas, where he is adopted by Jonathan Martha Kent and named Clark. As he grows older, he develops superhuman powers that Jonathan urges him to keep hidden, even refusing Clark's help years later during a tornado incident where he loses his life. Burdened with the guilt over Jonathan's death, Clark travels the globe hiding under various aliases, seeking a purpose in life. Daily Planet reporter Lois Lane receives an assignment to investigate the discovery of a Kryptonian scout ship in the Canadian Arctic. Clark enters the ship disguised as a worker and learns from its artificial intelligence, modeled after his father Jor-El, that Clark was sent to Earth to guide its people. While following Clark, Lois inadvertently triggers the ship's security system and uses his powers to rescue Lois from its defenses. He wears a uniform provided by the ship's AI and begins testing his flying abilities. Unable to convince Supervisor Perry White to publish an article on the incident, Lois tracks down Clark in Smallville with the intent of exposing him. However, Lois drops the story upon hearing of Jonathan Kent's sacrifice, keeping Clark's identity safe but fueling Perry's suspicions. Zod and his crew escape the Phantom Zone, where they were imprisoned for treason for their actions against Krypton. They travel to Earth to turn it into a new Krypton, possessing several terraforming devices salvaged from Kryptonian outposts. Following Clark and Lois' capture, Zod's science officer, Jack Zur, extracts Clark's genes to create Kryptonian colonists who will build a society based on Zod's ideals of genetic purity. Using the Jor-El AI to take over the ship, Clark and Lois flee and warn the U.S. military of Zod's plan, resulting in an explosive confrontation between Clark and Zod's troops. Zod deploys his most powerful terraforming device, the World Engine, which severely damages Metropolis and puts humanity's existence at risk. Given the codename Superman, Clark destroys the terraforming platform while the military launches a suicide attack, sending Zod's troops back to the Phantom Zone. With the ship destroyed at Krypton's only hope of revival gone, Zod vows to destroy Earth and its inhabitants out of revenge. The two Kryptonians engage in a lengthy battle across Metropolis, which concludes when Clark is forced to kill Zod as he attacks the family and train station. Clark adopts the moniker Superman and persuades the government to let him act independently. Under that condition, he does not turn against humanity. To gain covert access to dangerous situations, he takes a job under his civilian identity Clark as a freelance reporter for the Daily Planet. Interesting. So now let's take a look at the production of this movie, beginning with the development. In June 2008, Warner Brothers took pitches from comic book writers, screenwriters, and directors on how to successfully reboot the Superman film series. Comic book writers Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, and Brian Meltzer were among those who pitched their ideas for a reboot. Quote, "I told them, it's not that bad. Just treat Superman Returns as Ang Lee Hulk," Morrison said. Waid said, quote, "The Incredible Hulk has proven the audience will forgive you and let you redo the franchise." Morrison's idea was similar to their work on All-Star Superman, while Waid's was akin to Superman Birthright. Mark Millar, teaming with director Matthew Vaughn, also planned an epic 8-hour Superman trilogy, each installment released a year apart, similar to the Lord of the Rings. Millar compared it to the Godfather trilogy, in which it would chronicle the entire life of Superman, from the early days of Krypton, where little Kal-El witnesses his father's tireless struggle to save the planet, to the finale where Superman loses his powers as the sun starts to go supernova. According to Millar, Vaughn suggested his Stardust actor Charlie Cox as the Golden Age-inspired Superman when he was a bit more of a regular person. In August 2008, Warner Bros. Suggested a reboot of the film series. So executive Jeff Robinoff planned to have the film released either by 2010 or 2011, explained that, quote, Superman Returns didn't quite work as the film in the way we wanted it to. It didn't position the character the way he needed to be positioned. Had Superman worked in 2006, we would have had a movie for Christmas of this year or 2009. Now the plan is just reintroduce Superman without regard to a Batman and Superman movie at all. Paul Levitt stated in an interview that Batman holds the key to the Superman reboot. He elaborated, quote, Everyone is waiting for Nolan to sign on for another Batman. Once that happens, the release date for Superman and all the future projects will follow. In February 2009, Mick G., who previously planned to direct Superman Flyby, expressed interest in returning to the Superman franchise. In August 2009 saw a court ruling in which Jerry Siegel's family recaptured 50% of the rights to Superman's origins and Siegel's share of the copyright in Action Comics #1. In addition, a judge ruled that Warner Brothers did not owe the families additional royalties from previous films. However, if they did not begin production of a Superman film by 2011, then Siegel estate would have been able to sue for lost revenue on an unproduced film. The plot of Man of Steel employs a non-linear narrative and tells parts of the story in flashbacks. During story discussions for The Dark Knight Rises in 2008, David S. Goyer told Christopher Nolan his idea regarding how to present Superman in a modern context. Impressed with Goyer's concept, Nolan pitched the idea to the studio, who hired Nolan to produce and Goyer to write based on the financial and critical success of The Dark Knight. Nolan hired Bryan Singer's work on Superman Returns for his connection to Richard Donner's version, saying that, quote, a lot of people have approached Superman in a lot of different ways. I only know the way that has worked for us. That's what I know how to do. Emphasizing the idea that Batman exists in a world where he is the only superhero, and a similar approach to the Man of Steel would assure the integrity needed for the film. Nolan, however, clarified that the new film would not have any relationship with the previous film series, in which he commented, quote, each serves to the internal logic of the story. They have nothing to do with each other. Romanoff spoke to Entertainment Weekly and allowed a peek over the wall of secrecy surrounding their DC Comics plans, quote, it's setting the tone for what the movies are going to be like going forward. In that, it's definitely a first step. Plans included for the film to contain references to the existence of other superheroes, alluding to the possibility of a further DC universe, a salient tone for a shared fictional universe of DC Comics characters on film. Guillermo del Toro, who worked with Goyer on Blade 2, turned down the director's position on the reboot because of his commitment on a film adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness, while Robert Zemeckis was also approached. Ben Affleck, who would eventually be cast as Bruce Wayne / Batman in the film's sequel, Darren Aronofsky, Duncan Jones, Jonathan Liebesman, Matt Reeves, who later directed Batman Reboot, and Tony Scott were considered as potential directors before Zack Snyder was hired in October 2010. Casting began the following November. Snyder confirmed both Booster Gold and Batman references in the film, indicating their presence in the DC shared film universe. When Zod destroys a satellite, the words Wayne Enterprises are scrolled on the satellite. The film storyboard was created by Filipino-American storyboard artist Jay Olivia in his first live-action feature film project, along with Snyder. Olivia has cited the Japanese anime shows Dragon Ball Z and Birdie the Mighty as inspiration for the film's epic battle scenes. During the film's brainstorming, Olivia pitched the idea as, quote, I could come up with something I've never seen in live-action American cinema and only in anime. And now on to the filming. Principal photography began on August 1st, 2011 at Industrial Park near DuPage Airport under the codename Autumn Frost. Zack Snyder expressed reluctance to shooting the film in 3D due to the technical limitations of the format, instead chose to shoot the film two-dimensionally and convert the film into 3D in post-production for a 2D, 3D, and IMAX 3D release. Snyder also chose to shoot the film on film instead of digitally, because he felt to make the film a big movie experience. Cinematographer Amir Mokri shot the film with Panavision Panaflex Millennium XL2 cameras and C-series anamorphic lenses. Filming was expected to last 2 to 3 months. Production took place on Plano, Illinois on August 22nd and 29th. According to an interview with Michael Shannon, filming would continue until February 2012. Man of Steel filmed in the Chicago area, California, and Barnaby's Mammoth Studios in Vancouver, which was utilized as a set for Krypton and the extraterrestrial aircraft portrayed in the film. Vancouver's North Shore waterfront area was also used as the oil rig rescue scene where Superman is first introduced. Ucluelet and Nanaimo, British Columbia, feature prominently in the film's first hour. The turbine winter mist and rough seas are passed off Alaska in the film. Filming took place in the Chicago Loop from September 7th to 17th. The Chicago shoot was a unit project, meaning the filming would partake in numerous establishing shots as well as cutaways and might not necessarily include principal cast members. And now onto the design of the film. Man of Steel features a redesigned Superman costume by James Atchison and Michael Wilkinson. The costume preserves the color scheme and S logo, but adopts darker tones, and notably does not feature the red trunks usually worn by Superman. Zack Snyder said the costume is a modern aesthetic. He and the producers attempted to devise this suit featuring the red trunks, but could not design one that fit into the tone of the film, leading to their removal from the suit. Because of Wilkinson's unavailability, Snyder chose Atchison to design the suit. However, he only started developing it, and Wilkinson finished the development when he returned, and designed other characters' costumes as well. Due to the substantial weight a practical suit would yield, the Kryptonian armor for General Zod was constructed through CGI to allow Shannon freedom of movement. In a March 2014 interview with Esquire, Wilkinson explained the reason for the look of Superman's redesigned suit. Quote, "A lot of the efforts we took in the film were to explain why the suit looks the way it does. We didn't want it to be a random ornamental decision. We start the film on the planet Krypton, which is where the suit comes from, and we go to great pains to show the suit fitting into the culture. All the people you see on Krypton are wearing this chainmail-like suit, with the same detailing as a Superman suit. Everyone has their family crests on their chests. The cuff and the boot details are shared through all the different characters we meet on Krypton. So by the time we see Superman in his suit, we understand why it looks the way it looks." And now on to the effects. John D.J. Destroyed and served as the visual supervisor for Man of Steel, with Weta Digital, MPC, and Double Negative providing the visual effects for the film. Zack Snyder wanted the film to, quote, appear very natural because there's some very fantastical things in there, and he wanted people to suspend their disbelief. And we, the visual effects team, had to make it look as easy as possible for them to do so. Destroyed noted that the intent in shooting the film was to utilize handheld devices to make the film feel like a documentary-style film. Destroyed said, quote, "We had to think about what that would mean, since we also had to photograph some crazy action. So for the previs we started to think where our numerous cameras were and where our cameraman was. A lot of the rules are the Battlestar Galactica rules for the space cams that Gary Herzl developed for that miniseries, where I want to make sure if we're translating the camera and at all it makes sense. Unless the action is so over the top, like at the end where Superman is beating up Zod, we had to break it a bit. For the first act of the film taking place on the planet Krypton, Weta Digital placed alien-like planet environments, creatures, and the principal means of display, a technology the filmmakers called liquid geometry. Weta Digital visual effects supervisor Dan Lemon explained that, quote, "It's a bunch of silver beads that are suspended through a magnetic field, and the machine is able to control that magnetic field so that the collection of beads behave almost like three-dimensional pixels, and they can create a surface that floats in the air and describes whatever the thing is you're supposed to be seeing. The beads of the display, which at close would appear to be pyramids at a slight bevel, were designed to create a surface of the object to depict inside a console-like figure. In the modeling and animation aspect of the liquid geometry, Goodwin explained, quote, "We had to develop a pipeline to bring in assets, so instead of going through the route of reducing the polygon count to something usable, what we would then do, you would take the model in whatever way it was made and just scatter the discrete points onto it, and extract the matrix onto the animation, copy these points onto the matrix, and have these sparse points behaving in a way that the model would. After the animation, artists duplicated the beads onto the animated geometry for a pre-simulated lighting version to get approval on how the object would read. Sims were then run, quote, on all the targets, which would describe the discrete beads floating around on top of the surface, which would have its own set of parameters. In which Gwen further explained, quote, the bead size or the turbulence that would crawl along the surface, constantly updating the orientation or based on the normal provided by the surface. that was then saved to disk, and we would use that sim as a final target for the simulation. After the simulation process, Weta Digital ran every beat through a temporal filter to remove jitter to control the noise. Lighting solutions directly worked on the set. Weta utilized RenderMan to take advantage of improved ray tracing and existing objects. The sequences where Superman utilizes close combat fight scenes with the other Kryptonians proved to be a major challenge for the filmmakers and the visual effects crew. Destroyer explained, quote, "When we do these fights and these hyper-real things, we don't want to do the traditional, okay, I'm a cameraman, I'm shooting a clean plate. I'm going to pen over here to follow the action, and that's not really there yet, but we'll put the action in later. Because that's us animating the characters to the camera. So we do that animation with the characters, grappling, punching, and flying away, and we take the real guys up until the point until they were supposed to do that, and we cut. Then we put an environmental camera and take the environment, and then a camera for reference to the actors and get each movement. So then we had a set of high-res stills for the environment and characters. Then in post, we take these digi-doubles and animate them according to the speeds we want them to move in our digital environment. MPC handled the visual effects for the Smallville encounter sequence. Before providing the visual effects, the shots were pre-visualized for the fight choreography. After the pre-visualizations, live-action portions of the scene would be filmed in small pieces. Quote, "If, say, Superman was being punched and we land 50 meters away, we would shoot our start position and position, and the bridge that gap with the CG takeovers," says Guillaume Rocheron, the MPC visual effects supervisor. A camera rig would then obtain keyframes of the choreographed actor. Jordan said, quote, "It's a 6-still camera rig that's built on a pipe rig so that you could run it at the end of a setup and get stills of keyframes of a performance or expression. And then we could use those high-res stills to project onto the CGI double and get really accurate transition lighting and color right from the set." On set, a camera rig was used to capture the movement of the sequence. Dubbed EnviroCam, the visual effects crew would mount a Canon EOS 5D and Morris noddle head, allowing the crew to capture the environment on a 360-degree angle with 55K resolution for every shot. The process takes approximately 2 to 4 minutes. The set capture resulted in lighting and textures that could be reprojected onto geometry. Full-screen digital doubles were a major component for the fighting sequences. Digital armor was also added, along with the energy-based Kryptonian helmets. Cyberscan and FACS were conducted with the actors, and polarized and non-polarized reference photos were taken. Superman's cape and costume were scanned in high detail. The cape in particular became a direct extension of Superman's actions. For the sequences involving the terraforming of the city Metropolis, Double Negative handled the visual effects for the sequence. In order to construct a metropolis that seemed convincing and realistic, Double Negative utilized S3's City Engine to procedurally deliver the city. According to Jed Wright, a Double Negative visual effects supervisor, it was so much more sci-fi based role, quote, "So we took what they had done and extended a great deal. The work we were doing was based around the downtowns from New York, LA, and Chicago, and that gave us the building volumes for heights. We scaled those volumes with kit parts, but most of it then had to fall down, so to rig it for destruction and use it for other aspects of the work as well. For the destruction of the buildings, the studio rewrote its own asset system to focus towards its dynamic events. The bullet physics software was a heavily impacted component for the utilization of the destruction." Wright said that, quote, "We wanted to be able to run an RBD event and trigger all these secondary events, whether it was glass or dust simulations. All of those things needed to be chained up and handled in a procedural way. One of the advantages of this was that, because it was all based around a limited number of input components, you can make sure that they're modeled in a way that are usable in effects. You can model something, but there'll be another stage to rig it for destruction. Fire, smoke, and water simulation tools were developed at the Double Negative studio. The studio transitioned between the existing proprietary volume rendering software to rendering in Matra for elements such as fireball sims. Double Negative also used the in-house tool Squirt to handle larger scale sims and interaction for more tightly coupled volumes and particles. Regarding the battle between Superman and Zod, Double Negative implemented real photography onto its digital doubles. Now on to the music. Hans Zimmer initially denied popular rumors that he would be composing the film's score, but in June 2012, it was confirmed that Zimmer would in fact be doing so after all. To completely distinguish Man of Steel from the previous films, the iconic Superman March by John Williams was not used. Boo. Hans Zimmer's soundtrack for Man of Steel was released publicly on June 11, 2013. An unofficial rip of the musical score from the third trailer, entitled An Ideal of Hope, confirmed to be a cut-down version of the track, What Are You Going to Do When You're Not Saving the World, was released on April 19th. In late April, the official track listing of the 2-CD deluxe edition was revealed. And now, finally, let's take a look at the themes of this movie. Many reviewers interpreted Man of Steel as a religious allegory, especially since Warner Brothers set up a website that contains, quote, a 9-page pamphlet entitled Jesus, the Original Superhero. Joseph Craig compared Kal-El's struggles to the Passion of Christ, saying that, quote, Kal-El was more than willing to sacrifice himself to save the people of Earth. Originally directed to reveal his identity and powers to the world, Superman decides to turn himself over to Zod to save humanity from annihilation. Craig also states that there was an allegory to the Trinity within Man of Steel. Quote, Jor-El returns to Kal-El on Earth as a ghost, guiding his budding superhero son on his journey to salvation. Before Jor-El sends his son off to Earth baby Moses style, he tells his wife that, like Jesus, he'll be a god to them. Paul Astley of the Washington Post writes that Superman floats in space with his arms splayed out as if nailed to an invisible cross. A fact that Craig also mentioned in his assessment of the film. The protagonist of the film was also 33 years old and seeks counsel at a church. Writing for the Huffington Post, Colin Leota compared Zod to Adolf Hitler, citing, quote, he feels his vision for pure Krypton, i.e. a society like the one Hitler envisioned with his eugenics program, is the only answer for survival. Yeah, I definitely say that's kind of true, so yeah. So overall, as an introduction to the DCEU, I actually kind of like this movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do acknowledge that there are some problems with it, but other than that, it's an okay movie for me, so yeah. So overall, I give Man of Steel 4 Superman capes out of 5. Actually, take it back, 3 capes out of 5, so yeah. Well, anyway, so that's it for Man of Steel. Don't forget, tune in tomorrow as we take the next film in the series, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. So until then, in the words of Superman, I fight for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.